Hi everybody, happy Friday, Straton Petak. I am Sarah of Expat in Croatia, and every Friday, 5 o'clock Croatia time, answer 5 questions from people who have sent them in on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, expatinCroatia.com, my consulting sessions, email, and people who send them to me in the mail. So I'm in London today, and how do you like this goddess glow that I have going on right now? The sun is going down behind me. I'm on a canal with houseboats. I don't know, my friend suggested this would be a great place, so here I am. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm so glad that I actually got the time zone change right. So I believe it is 5 o'clock in Croatia, even though it's 4 o'clock here. So I've got 5 great questions for you. Thank you so much for being here. I've been in London all week. It is cold, but I've had a really nice time. I've gone to all the museums and eaten lots of food. And that's about all I'm going to say about it right now. But we're going to go ahead and dive in. Okay, so this first question is from Janko. This is a friend of Maria, our content manager. And Janko asks, can gifted children skip a grade in Croatia? Yes, they can. So there is actually a rule book. So in Croatia, you have the law, and then you have the rule book, which is how you implement the law. And then there's this other thing, which doesn't apply right now. Even the lawyer had a hard time explaining it to me. So we'll leave that out. But the rule book is how you implement the law. So there's a rule book on the education of gifted students. So depending on the case, they may be allowed to take 2 classes at once, or they may be able to test out of a grade. So the decision to complete school in a shorter period of time has to be made by the Teachers Council at the request of the student, parent, or guardian, or the class teacher after obtaining the commission's opinion. The commission consists of a pedagogue, a psychologist, and a class teacher, and in some cases a doctor. The commission determines the health, psychological, and pedagogical justification of the request. So yes, it is possible to skip a grade in Croatia, both in primary school as well as in high school. So thank you so much to Janko for that question. This next question came to us from Mike. He filled out our 5 Question Friday form, which you can find in the caption. You can find at the link in our profile, but you can also just submit questions by sending us a DM, and then we'll answer it here. So he asked, my question regards to how to create a simple will that is valid in Croatia. As my understanding is a foreign will is not recognized in Croatia. Is there a template that can be used for a basis of a will, and which ministry would have to approve it? Okay, so it's not completely blanket true that a foreign will is not recognized in Croatia. I have to start by saying that. It depends on a lot of factors, because the will is governed by Croatian law. It's also governed by the law of the country where the will was created. It's also governed by the law of the countries where they have assets. So there's just so many things. And also there's treaties in place. So it's just brass tacks. It's much better to just do a will in Croatia. It makes it a lot easier, because then all that other mess doesn't have to be taken into account. Now, so we've taken care of that. Now, as far as the basic elements of a will, it should have your name, it should have your OIB, it should have your registered address in Croatia, and it should also have, you know, the contents. Now, a last will can be binding if it is communicated verbally in extreme circumstances. If on a deathbed, then it is binding. But if it's not on a deathbed, once the extreme circumstances have passed, within 30 days of that passing, then it has to be written down. Also, a will can be written personally by hand. A will can be computerized with 2 witnesses who gain no benefit from the will. And it can also be computerized with solemnizatia, nailed it, performed by a notary, in which case witnesses are not needed. Did it once, can't do it again. Solemnizatia, that's when you actually go on the public notary and your will gets read line by line to make sure that it's understood. I had to do that with my home loan, my mortgage agreement. It was not fun. Okay, so where do you go from here? If you have a bunch of complex stuff, I would recommend using a lawyer for something like this so that they can really kind of sort it out according to the law. But ultimately, you can write a will yourself. That's not a problem. We do have a guide on how to write a contract that is binding. So we go over the different kinds of contracts, and included in that, we include wills as well. So if you would like that, send us a link or send us a DM, and we'll be happy to send it to you. And if you ever want to consult with a lawyer about a will, you're not sure how to sort it out, then send us a DM, and we'll be happy to connect you to one. Okay, thank you so much, Mike. All right, next, this comes from Ben. This was on email. Once I qualify to apply for permanent residence, do I have to? Can I just keep applying for temporary residence? I have to put my glove on, it's cold. Okay, well, no, you don't have to. No one's going to force you to apply for permanent residence, but why? Why not do it? It's very important to do it, okay? But I want to explain, because there's a couple different situations here. If you are a EU citizen, okay, you don't have to apply for a permanent residence if you don't want. In fact, nowadays, European citizens are granted 10-year temporary residence cards. So at the 5-year mark, your temporary residence would still be valid. It wouldn't even really matter. If you're the family member of an EU or Croatian citizen, yes, you could continue to apply for temporary residence. That would be fine. But if you are not any of those people, and you're just like a regular old folk like me, and you get to that point, and you turn it down, you have to start over. Like, over. And most likely they will make you leave the country for 90 days, and then you can return, and you just start from scratch. The only times I have heard people say, oh, do I have to apply for permanent residence, is because they don't want to take the language test. Now, this person did not say that, but that's my guess, because I don't know what other reason someone would have for not applying for permanent residence other than the language test. That, to me, is not a great reason. And this is not a judgment thing. This is just my experience. I took that language test, and I was freaking out about it. For 3 months, I freaked out about that test. I took flashcards with me everywhere, and I was having panic attacks like the week prior. I was having a panic attack afterwards, even though I knew I'd passed. It is not that big a deal. It isn't. Like, it's 2 parts. Part is oral, part is, which I was not prepared for at all, and then part is written. Because they told me there wasn't going to be an oral part. That was a lie. So the written part, I didn't understand anything that it said at all. But the written is multiple choice, and also you have to write a paragraph about yourself. Now the multiple choice, well, I didn't understand any of the sentences, I didn't understand any of the words. All they wanted to know is that you understood cases. And if you understand the basic concept of cases and you can identify the endings, then to me, it's pretty clear. Like, I just used not just process of elimination, but context. And I was able to ace that. And then as far as the paragraph, you know what it is ahead of time. Essentially, all it is you just have to write like a paragraph about yourself. Ja sam Sara, imam Chetri dese godine. Like, you just basically, this is my name, this is how many years I have, I live in Split, I'm from America. You know, talk about your kids or your family or whatever. I like to go to the market and shop. Like, it's very basic. It's like kindergarten level, Croatian level. And then the oral, I went into a room with 2 other people from Kosovo, and then we all got asked questions. I was miserable at that. But the proctor, it's all completely up to the proctor. They have the discretion to pass or fail you. So she said, well, you need to speak more. You can't speak pretty much at all. But you ace the written, so clearly you understand some Croatian. So if you're in Croatia for 5 years, so if you get to that permanent residence point, you should be trying to steadily learn it over that time. But you don't have to be anywhere near fluent. No way. it was so much easier than I thought it was. So I go into a lot of detail about taking the permanent residence language test in our guide on permanent residence. So we have 2 guides on permanent residence. One is how to apply as a third country national. One is how to apply as a European national. But then we also have a guide on how to transition from temporary residence to permanent residence, because when you are third country national applying, it's a bit different than an EU citizen. As an EU citizen, you're entitled to it. They just give it to you. But if you're a third country national, you have to apply and go through an application process. You always have to have a permit in place. So when you get to the end of that 5 years and you apply, you always have to have residence. So what you do is you apply for permanent residence, but you also apply for what's called autonomous residence. And autonomous residence is kind of like an extension. And you get this one time. Sometimes twice, but only twice if you've already applied for permanent residence and at the end of that first year of autonomous stay, they have not approved your permanent residence yet. But that's it. So you only get that one chance to apply for permanent residence. If you don't take it, then like I said, depending on your situation, you probably are going to have to leave for 90 days and then you start all over again. And look, with the language test, you can take it as many times as you want. If you fail, then you fail, but I wouldn't just not apply for permanent residence. It's a big deal. It's a big deal for a number of different reasons. You gain a bunch of rights by having permanent residence that you don't have otherwise. And one of the nice things about it, which is helpful to some people, not me, but because I'm like a lifer here, but you know, some people are frustrated because they have to stay in Croatia at least 9 months per year. But with permanent residence, you can be gone for up to 2 years at one time. You can be gone much longer without losing your residence. So permanent residence is important. I encourage everyone to apply for it if they are given that opportunity to do so. End of tangent. And if anyone has questions about the test, we're happy to answer them. So just send us a DM and we'll send you all of our permanent residence guides. Okay. Next, this comes from Leon. I had a consulting session with him back in the fall, and he wanted to know, what is a wheelbarrow called? So my guess is that the wheelbarrow is called different things all over the world, even in other English-speaking countries. But in America, we call it a wheelbarrow. So a wheelbarrow is usually on construction sites, and it has one wheel at the front and it has 2 wheels at the back, and it's kind of got like this bucket in it, and you, I don't know, carry stuff around in it. And he's renovating a house in Istria, and that's why he asked. And you know, as we know, in Croatia, it's very common for there to be different words for different things in different parts of the country. So I asked the team about wheelbarrows, and they said that in Zagreb it's called a tačke. And in Dalmatia, it's called a carriola. Fun facts. All right, looks like Diana has a question. Sarah, it takes 5 years as temporary residency, then apply for permanent. If I own property, will this expedite the process? So yes, after 5 years, in most cases. The only difference is if you're the spouse of a Croatian, you can apply after 4 years. Everybody else has to wait 5 years to qualify to apply for permanent residence. Owning a property has absolutely no bearing whatsoever. Thank you so much for the question, Diana. Okay, I think this is our last question. Yes, it is. All right, this came from Jane on Instagram. I've inherited a property, 1/6 to be precise. It's all been legalized. Now I want to realize my share, but no one wants to buy me out. Can I force the sale of a property, and if no one wants it, or force them to buy me out? So I chatted with our lawyer about this because I had no idea. So in a situation like this, you have the right to a division process by the court. You can make a motion to the court that you want the ownership divided on a property. However, when you initiate a process like this with the court, you have no control over the decision that they make in how it's divided. So the court could mandate that someone buy someone out. The court could put the property up for auction. If it's land, it could be parcelized. So yes, in this case, you can go through with that procedure, but like I said, you don't have control over how the court decides to handle it in the end. So it's best if you can try and negotiate with the neighbors first before seeking the court's help after. So that's it for today, guys. Thank you so much for joining me on this London edition of 5 Question Friday. I will be back in Split on Sunday, and so I will be back in Croatia for 5 questions next Friday. Thank you so much for being here. Love you all so much. Happy, happy, happy to have this time with you every Friday. And I gotta run now. I'm gonna go see my friend who was my roommate in Amsterdam 15 years ago, and I'm so excited I haven't seen her in 7 years. So have a great weekend. Bye, 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 guys. Ciao.